let's talk about photos and cameras. Cool. So, welcome back to my YouTube channel. If it's not welcome back, then it's welcome. I'm Jahara. I'm a content creator and I stream on Twitch and I cosplay on like a bunch of different platforms like Twitter and Instagram and TikTok. And I have been receiving a lot of questions as of late. I would say for the last couple months after we made some really big changes about what kind of camera I use to take my cosplay photos. So let me put a few cosplay photos up to give you an example of what those look like. So those are some of the cosplay photos that we've made in the last few months when we kind of made a conscious effort, and by we, if you don't know, me and my fiance who take my photos, we made a conscious effort to kind of up our game on cosplay. I've been cosplaying for about a year, but it wasn't until a couple months ago that we were like, maybe instead of just focusing on like the cosplay, you know, like the wig, the makeup, the costume itself, maybe we should put a little bit more effort into the photography of each cosplay, because there's kind of two sides to it. I've seen really amazing cosplays where sometimes the photos, unless they're booked with someone professional, they don't really get to show off all of the amazing aspects and the effort that the cosplayers put into the photo. Or I've seen a cosplay that is, for all intents and purposes, relatively simple, but the photography is just like, so like, it's just like cinematic. Like you see it and you're like, wow, what a great photo. Even if the cosplay itself might just be like a character who wears like a sweater and pants. You know what I'm saying? Very recognizable, but the photo is really what sells it. So it can kind of go either like one of two ways. So we were like, well, what if we can take some of my cosplays that I've done before, revamp those and take some more photos and kind of give them some new life, some new sparkle. It was, if I'm being honest, it was also kind of a way to save a little bit of money, because we were like, you can just use cosplays that you already own. And I have a lot of cosplays. And then we can reshoot them, so we'll give them new life and I won't have to buy any new cosplays or make any new cosplays for a while. Spoiler alert, that plan didn't work. However, we did start taking new photos. So I get a lot of questions about what kind of camera I use and editing software to take my photos. And I feel like the answer that I give people when they ask me what camera I use disappoints them. Because it's this. It's my iPhone 12 Pro Max. That's a mouthful. Specifically, the back camera. The back camera is just leagues better than the front selfie camera. So I do not take any of my photos using the front selfie camera, exclusively the back cam. And that's it. That's my camera. I have a camera for stream. It's a Sony a6000. I don't use it for cosplay because I don't want to move it. I don't want to unplug it. I don't want to, it's all set up for streaming and I stream frequently, full-time streamer, don't want to move it. I have this camera, which is my old streaming camera that I upgraded from after a certain point that I use for YouTube. And to be honest, I'm not a skilled enough photographer to use a full-on camera. I feel like what really matters and what really gets the questions going in terms of when people ask like, what camera do you use to take your photos, is the editing that we do on the back end. So we take everything with the back camera on my iPhone. Oftentimes we make sure that either the photos are on one of two settings, either on portrait mode. I really like the portrait mode that the Apple iPhone has. You can have to be a little bit careful with it because sometimes it can over blur, but you're able to change that in the settings. easy for those of us who haven't taken a whole photography class just yet, or we use it on RAW mode, which is one of the reasons I like this phone, because it gives you the option to take photos in RAW, which is a fancy term, again, for those of us who aren't super versed in photography, myself included. Just means that it is just all of the information. It's just the most raw, basic form of the photo. So our portrait mode does a little bit of smoothing, it does a little bit of blurring and color correction. Raw photos are just exactly what the camera sees, boom. They're really good for editing because there's so much information in that photo and none of it is like pre-edited or pre-smooth like portrait mode would do, so it's a lot easier to work with. That said, I had to get used to taking photos in RAW, because when you're used to taking them in like an iPhone portrait mode where it pre-smooths your skin, does some color correction, blurs your background, you don't realize it, but you've started to believe that what that camera is doing for you is like what it sees is like just the reality. And it's not. RAW is the reality. So at first I didn't like taking photos in RAW because they would just look so much less polished than the ones I took in portrait mode. And I'd be like, I hate this photo. It's ugly. It makes me look ugly. What do I do? I want to use portrait mode. But like this one is easier to edit. You can do so much more with the lighting and the color and everything on a RAW photo, but you don't have to if you don't want to. Then back-end editing. What do we use for editing? So we actually do a 2-step editing process. The first thing that we put the photo into is a program called Adobe Lightroom. Yay! Why am I clapping for Adobe Lightroom? I don't know, but I really like it. My fiance does most of the work in Adobe Lightroom. He is much better versed in Lightroom than I am. I can do a little bit. He can do a lot more in it, but we use Lightroom primarily for the coloring of our photos. We have an editing style that we've come to where we do a lot of darkening of and blurring of the backgrounds, almost in a vignette kind of way, but not always the same. And then since we do a lot of cosplay and anime characters, superheroes, we like to brighten up the colors of the costume. But almost all of the cosplays and their coloring and the background, everything is worked out through Adobe Lightroom. Then, once we have gotten the photo to look visually in terms of color, how we want the photo to look, he shoots that photo over to me, and I stick that baby in Facetune too. Yeah, you think that I would use something like fancy like Photoshop? I'm not a photographer. And honestly, out of the two of us being me and my fiance, he has much more of a passion for the photography side of cosplay. My passion in cosplay and in content creation is in the hair, the wigs, the contacts, the makeup, the cosplay. I want to have a great photo at the end of it, but I'm going to cut as many corners as I can to get the photo that I want, where he's willing to really put in the work. He uses Photoshop occasionally and Lightroom and does all of the extra, but I pop it into Facetune when he's done with the coloring, and I use Facetune primarily to buff away imperfections that I have on my skin, and that either be face, depending on how much of my skin is showing in the cosplay, face, arms, legs. Sometimes I have a habit of brightening up some of like my other features, like my teeth, if I'm smiling, or my eyes and things like that. But I actually don't have to do much. It used to be that I did the majority of my editing in Facetune, but we actually have taken to doing the majority of the editing in Lightroom and then using Facetune just to buff away the imperfections. My main things are I have like smaller imperfections on my skin that I like to get rid of. And just generally, I think, honestly, it happened the day that I turned 30 years old. I have really deep under eye bags that I like to take care of in post-editing. So yeah, I wanted to make this video to let you know that I understand that for some people that I let them know that I use an iPhone to take my photos, and that might be received as mildly disappointing because you might feel that if you use the same camera that I use, that it would automatically kind of produce the same type of results, but it's really not the camera that I'm using. I would say it has a lot more to do with the editing that we choose to use on the back end. And we're still have a lot to learn on that front, but it's also like you don't need to be an expert. You can pick up your phone, you can take the photos, use the back camera if you can. It's always gonna give you more information. It's always gonna give you a crisper photo. I used to not believe that. Let me tell you, I used to not believe that, okay? And I've been converted, I've been changed. I've seen the differences and I almost can't take photos on my front camera anymore because I can see the difference immediately, even prior to any editing. It's a hard life, honestly. I wish I had lived in the ignorance of it. Because now I'm like, just trying to take a selfie, but I want to use my back camera, but I can't see myself. You don't have to be an expert. Pick up an iPhone, use Facetune. If you want to learn to use darkroom or Lightroom, if you're wanting to pay for it, there's classes and instructions on YouTube. That's how my fiance has learned. I learned by watching a little bit less than him and watching some of him and kind of just mimicking some of the stuff that he does. But we've only been doing this for a couple months and it makes me feel like I've better embodied all of the work that I put into the cosplays that I do have, and I'm extremely, extremely happy about it. So I highly recommend. Yay. Obviously, if you use like an actual like big old cool camera, like probably like one that I'm filming on, you can also do even more with that. But if you don't have the funds or the skill yet to do so, you can do it. Anyway, I hope that you found this video helpful. If you did, please make sure that you like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't for more videos about content creation and cosplay, streaming, and just general life as a content creator that's a mom and a Black woman. Oh, and share with your family members, your coworkers, I don't know, your besties. And I'll see you next time. Bye.